The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
My friend, how are you?
I'm doing great today, Ralph. How are you doing?
I'm great, too. Let's talk a little baseball. A's baseball at that. What an exciting win yesterday.
Oh, the 12-11 win? Unbelievable.
Yes, what a comeback. Got to start with Matt Chapman, because I think this is going to be a season, Jerry, where we're going to have to find positive things amongst a lot of negative things. So let's at least take time each show to talk about real positives. And Matt Chapman, to me, is the next real superstar of the A's. I don't know if you agree with that. And I don't even know how the pups in the background, if they'll agree with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna let them out so that hopefully they won't make so much noise.
Okay.
Come on.
There we go.
Where is he? He doesn't want to go up. Oh, there he is. Come on, you want to go up? He's going like a whirling dervish to get out. And hopefully he'll stay out. The other one won't bark. We call him a devil in a dog suit at times.
Okay, well, nothing's perfect, but the companionship of a dog is terrific. I've had a few in my lifetime, and it's great. So I envy you that. Getting back to Matt Chapman, how do you see him progressing? The A's offered him an extension, which is something they rarely do, and he rejected it, from what I understand, or at least his agent Steve Boris rejected it on his behalf. Is there still a chance that may come to fruition?
Not if Boris is representing him. As you know, they have 3 seasons, and they get a couple arbitration seasons, and they have their sixth year is their walk year. So the A's really only have him for 5 years, or control over him for 5 years, and then the 6th year he'll be gone. And if he performs, he'll get a huge payout. He'll get a huge payday.
I know, but at this point, given a year and a half in the majors, offering an extension with it isn't a huge payday, but it's solid and steady for a lot of years, because if he tanks at the end of this year, he's not. You understand what I'm saying? The kid doesn't want to bet against himself, but on the other hand, security is nice.
Sure.
He could get enough to live on for the rest of his life with one contract, even if he never gets that real big payday along the way, and he may get it with the security, or down the road, even though he got the security now. So it's a tough decision to make, and with hindsight, we'd all make better decisions in life sometimes, speaking for myself. But, it's a crapshoot. Talent-wise, wow, he's terrific.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes sense for them to lock him up for the addition, to get him past the 6 years. Right now, they only have to pay him the minimum for the 3 or 4 years, until they go to arbitration. But if they were to get him an extension and pay him, let's say $4 million and $6 million, by the time that rolls, or the 5 years roll around, or 6 years roll around, he's made $25-30 million, which is a tremendous sum of money for a young man. And you're right, he can put it and salt away enough money to secure his future and his children's future going forward. Now, the other side of the coin that you mentioned is that what happens if he gets hurt? And in baseball, you can get hit You can break a leg. Anything can happen. Your back can go out. We've seen players who had a tremendous amount of potential have their career shortened by an injury. So you never know. And, there's an old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Right.
And
right.
if he can get that kind of money from the A's now, I say go for it.
A good example of that is Wright with the Mets, who signed a long-term contract, got hurt, and has to be paid for that long-term contract once you sign it. So it's not only getting hurt, it's ability fading or whatever. He could be a flash in the pan. There have been a lot of rookies and second-year people who have had great years. Joe Charbonneau comes to mind. And then
Mark Friedrich had a great year.
Exactly. And for one reason or another, they just have shortened careers. So he's at a crossroad in his life where he's putting his faith in Boros, who's gotten him this far. Let's see what happens. And I wish him the best either way, because somebody plays the game of business. It shouldn't interfere with the fruition of your career in terms of your abilities and stats that you can put up and what have you. I hate it when the business side of it gets involved, because naturally, as an A's fan, you'd like to see him as he has. He's succeeded, come up through the minors, and stay with them forever, hopefully. It's always sad when people like Giambi leave. You can go back to Catfish Hunter and all of them, and one by one, it always makes you sad when your heroes leave. And,
sure. And it affects the people coming to the games to see the players at the game.
And it affects the kids that kids grow up fans of these guys. And that wasn't much different than it was for me in the 50s when Sal Maglie got traded from my Giants, to Peter Trunk's Dodgers. So that's always the way of it. But you'd like to avoid that, and you'd like to see a way of players staying with one team like a Derek Jeter did for as long as possible. It's good for the game.
Yeah, it would be nice. But the A's business plan, it does not include that right at the moment, although Bean said he'd like to change it and keep the young players together and to build a team identity so that they could grow together like they did in the 80s when they had Canseco, McGuire, Walt Weiss. They had all those guys come up. They had Terry Steinbach. They made a trade for Carney Lansford. They built a club. It won 3 championships. They were in the playoffs from 88 through 92, something like that, before they fell apart. But at least they had a committed owner. The big rap on John Fisher is he's not a committed owner. He's invisible. We don't know where he is. We don't know what his plans are. We don't know what he wants to do with the team. Why isn't he coming forward and saying get the ballpark built, get the people into the stands? I don't understand these things. And I have a comment about Scott Boras. Sometimes the player, and I know these guys are young and they haven't been around the block, but some of them got good smarts. Scott Boras had a bunch of free agents this year. One of them was Mike Moustakas. They turned down a qualifying offer for Mike Moustakas for $17 million. Moustakas could not get a job, and he ended up going back to play for Kansas City for $6 million. Boras cost him $11 million. He deserves to be fired for that. He really does. He did not act in his players' best interest.
Well, I contend he's playing for the next class. He's playing baseball. He's going easy on baseball management, so he could set it up for his next class next year. he's got 4 or 5 guys, Bryce Harper included,
Yeah.
that are multi-billion-dollar guys, or whatever you want to call them in today's day and age. They'll make more money than anybody's made up till now.
Sure.
So
yeah, they're talking about Harper being a $40 million man, a $400 million contract. It's unbelievable. But in the meantime, you see that Jose Bautista couldn't get a job. He just signed with the Braves to play third base. He broke in with the Pirates as a third baseman.
Right.
And Trevor Cahill took a while to get a job.
And Bautista goes down to the minors to get in shape and what have you.
Sure.
And who knows how that's going to work out at third base. He's been away from the position for 8 years, for crying out loud. It's a great, and look at the numbers that he's going to bring if he does do well. Why he didn't sign with an American League team is beyond me in terms of someone with the DH.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. But you got to be impressed with what the Braves and Phillies both are doing to regain respectability in the National League East.
Yeah, and the Phillies, and Jake Arrieta is a case in point. No one would sign him. They thought he had lost, what is he, 32 years old? Mm-hmm. They thought he had lost a little speed on his fastball, and the Phillies signed him just before spring training, and so far he's been outstanding. He pitched very well last night.
Yep.
So that's a feather in the Phillies' cap to sign him.
Yep. A's pitching. Let's talk about that for a little bit. I know the Barry Hill grown.
Well, no.
There are some positives.
Spots.
Yes, absolutely.
There is. Sean Manaea, who's going to pitch tomorrow night, Saturday night, you should say, against Boston's Chris Sale. That should be a marquee matchup, for baseball fans. Sean Manaea has had 4 starts. He's 2-2. He could be 4-0. In 2 games he lost, the A's didn't give him any run support. So he has a sparkling 1.63 earned run average after four games. In all 4 games, he's gone 7 innings or more, 7 plus innings, which has given the bullpen an opportunity to rest. He looks like he's becoming more consistent, and he's been the real one bright spot in the A's rotation. Now, the disappointment so far has been Kendall Graveman, and Graveman was pitching Friday night, and the Red Sox have a lefty going against them, a former Athletic Pomeranz, who has done real well with Boston. He won 17 games last year for the Red Sox. Graveman won 6 games last year and then 10 games the year before, 2016. And in 2016, Graveman showed that he had potential to become an ace on the staff, even though he only won 10 games. He was hurt part of the year last year. Nothing seems to be working for him this year. His earned run average is a shade under 10. It's 9.87. He hasn't gotten out of the 5th inning in any of the games. Most of the games he's been kicked out in the 4th inning. They've gotten to him. He's allowed 6 home runs so far in 4 games. So Graveman has got to get something going. His sinker apparently is coming up into the zone, and they're whacking it out of the park. And to have an earned run average of 10 for a starter is just not good. I think
now
tonight,
would this be could this be something coaching could step in with? And with that said, you've got a former catcher as in Melvin, and you've got the team carries a pitching coach. How did it come to be that Kurt Young is not the pitching coach of the A's?
Yeah, that was a surprise last year when they fired Kurt. I've known Kurt for a long time, and he went to Boston one year. It didn't work out there for him. He came back to the A's, and he had established good rapport with the pitchers. But apparently, either the guys stopped listening to him, or they felt that he wasn't figuring out what was wrong with their deliveries or their release points or whatever the pitchers have to do to get better. The A's felt that it was time to get a new voice in there, and they brought in Scott Emerson as their pitching coach. What I don't know that much about Emerson or what his record is. Manaea, if Manaea was a project, he's doing well with Manaea. If Graveman was a project, he's not doing so well. So the jury's still out on him. And they have to, I'm sure that what the A's do, and like so many other clubs, they have all the equipment, and they watch the pitchers, they study their deliveries to see if there are any changes from this year or last year or when they were good, and they make adjustments. And if the adjustments are successful, the pitcher will do much better. But so far, in Graveman's case, it doesn't seem that if he's made adjustments, that they're working. So he's just got to go out there and work through it. And hopefully he can get through 5 innings or give him 6 innings. And if he can't, I don't know what they're going to do with him. They may have to send him down to Nashville, and which would be quite a come down for a guy that was supposed to be the prize in the trade that sent Donaldson to Toronto.
Is there anybody at AAA knocking at the door? Just Bassett is down there, and I don't know who else might be down there to come up. They sent Gossett down, but I was never a big fan of Gossett. So I'm going to say they really don't have anyone to bring up at this point in time. Okay, well, let me throw in a little more positive then. If it can't be from the pitching staff, let it be from Jed Lowry. Whoa, what a week.
What a start. As you may recall, Lowry, who's from Oregon originally, went to Stanford, played his college ball at Stanford, and was drafted by the Red Sox as a shortstop. Unfortunately for Jed, he got hurt, and the rap on him was he couldn't stay healthy. He got traded to Houston, played there for a couple of years, then came over to Oakland in 2013 and 14, and did reasonably well. The A's traded him back to Houston, and we got him back, I think, in 2016. And Jed was not a happy camper. He didn't want to come back to Oakland at the time. And he was kind of hurt. He was hurt in 2016. He had a leg injury. He had to shut it down. But last year, when he was healthy, man, that guy was raking all season long. He had 49, about 270, 275, and showed that he really had come back. And the rumors were that they were going to trade him to a contender, but that never happened. And he came back this year, and he's been on fire. He's healthy. He's a veteran. He may not have the range that he used to have, and I think in the game on Wednesday that the A's won 12-11, one of the balls got through the infield. Left-hand hitter, I think, was in the 9th inning when the White Sox tied the game. And Jed just couldn't get the ball. Maybe if it was a couple of years younger, he would have. But he has been amazing. He has knocked in 21 runs in 19 games. He has 6 home runs. He's hitting .350. He's doing everything that a player could do. In the game against the White Sox in the bottom of the 8th, the A's were trailing 10-9. He turned on a fastball and sent it into the left field seats to put him up 11-10. And it's just been a big spark plug in the A's offense. He's been terrific. Can't say enough about him.
Nice. How about Pinder? He's not getting many at-bats.
Well, Pinder, as you know, got hurt. He's just coming back from the 10-day disabled list. So he's maybe missed a third of the games that the A's have played.
Okay.
And they're platooning him in left field with Matt Joyce. And Joyce, being a left-hand hitter, is going to see more games because there are more right-hand pitchers. Pinder also is a super sub. He can play any position in the infield, and he can play center field. He can play left field, right field. He's the team's Ben Zobrist, if you will. And like most hitters, in order to really get things going, you have to get a lot of playing time, and it's kind of tough to come in sitting on the bench for 3 games, then playing a game, then sit down for another 2 games.
Does he have enough range to play shortstop?
He can do it. Oh, yeah.
Are you happy with Simeon's game?
Simeon is, in my mind, just an average shortstop. He's not a great shortstop. He has more potential with his offense than he does with his defense.
Well, let me ask you this. Would it be better, I mean, as well as Lowry hits and as limited as his range is, if Pinder has more range, would playing shortstop a little bit give, maybe he might be a better option down the road?
In my mind, possibly, yeah, definitely. I think the time has come to let's see what he can do at shortstop. Okay. And if he can do a better job than Pinder, then he'll have Simeon, he'll have won the job. At the present time,
I'd like to see them go to him a little bit more at shortstop.
Yeah. Simeon's not bad. As I say, he's an average shortstop. His fielding was suspect when he took over the job. Remember, he was the second baseman with the White Sox and never played shortstop. And it's a totally different position. And he worked with Ron Washington, worked hard with Ron Washington to get better. He made 35 errors his first year. He led the league in errors.
Yeah. I think there's a direct correlation with how well a team plays up the middle with how well their pitching staff does. Nothing more frustrating than for a pitcher to hit a ground ball that barely gets up the middle. Just out of range of an average, as you say, below average range guy. You're putting so much more pressure, so many more balls thrown, so many more guys on to advance and this, that, and the other thing. Got to get some defense. I mean, we remember when we had Tejada and Chavez. How about that? Was that the right pronunciation? Then I used to pronounce it. I think I used to pronounce it Agahovo. Nobody could understand it. It was really, really. But they were terrific on that left side of the infield. And,
yes, they were.
And you had.
And you go back to Carney Lansford and Walt Weiss, and then later Mike Bordick. Those guys really pick it up. They were great fielders.
Absolutely.
And one of the cardinal rules in baseball is don't beat yourself. And when you make errors and you give the opposing team 4 outs in an inning, you're gonna walk the plank and you're gonna be burned a lot. Mm-hmm. And that happens all the time. So you're right. You don't want to give the opposing team more than 3 outs an inning. And defense is critical to winning.
Okay. Hey, Jerry, as usual, you've done a great job in analyzing what's going on. Anything coming up this week that you want to talk about with the A's?
Well, the A's are playing the Red Sox this weekend, and the Red Sox are the hottest team in baseball. They're 16-2. Their pitching has been outstanding. The earned run average for the Red Sox is 1.23. So, and they've taken a new approach. They've got 2 former Cy Young Award winners on their staff, David Price and Rick Porcello, and they got Chris Sale, who's a perennial Cy Young Award winner candidate. And what they've done is the pitching coach they were concerned that Sale wore down last year, and they're going to trust their bullpen. They've built their bullpen, and they don't want these guys to go more than 6 innings. They don't want to wear them out. They want to be strong down the latter part of the season. And so they've taken a new approach. Rather than have a guy go 7 innings, 8 innings, whatever it is, they're going to trust their bullpen for 5 to 6 innings as it goes along.
Well, that works well. That kind of stuff works well until you burn the bullpen out, and you get.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, by the All-Star game. I've talked to pitchers over the years, and one guy told me that in July he could barely lift his arm over his shoulder. He was so tired, and that's what happens when the bullpen is out there every night, and you get a guy going out for 25 pitches every night. In 4 nights he's thrown 100 pitches, and he doesn't get any time off, as opposed to a starter throws 100 pitches and gets 4 days off.
Jerry, so, you were the pharmacist of the A's back in the 90s. Yep. Pitcher comes to you and he could barely get his arm up. Was it ibuprofen type medication that you prescribed?
No, they had bottles of ibuprofen and naproxen all over the clubhouse, and I've seen guys take 4 or 6 of them at a time.
Oh wow!
You know. They did have medication. The players couldn't order medication. The trainers had to order it for them. The doctors would prescribe it. The trainers would call me and order it in, and we'd send it over to the club.
Now you wouldn't get prescriptions for individuals. You would get prescriptions for everybody. Am I correct?
We had individuals. They had a kit. The team contained a kit of about 65 drugs that they took with them, that they traveled with, had it in the office all times. And then they had prescriptions for specific players. One player had a bout of plantar fasciitis, and he was prescribed anti-inflammatories and very powerful anti-inflammatories like indomethacin or Voltaren, those drugs. And and the players were responsible. They had insurance, but they were responsible for their copay. I forgot how it was, but they were responsible for their prescriptions. And then there are also players if they're injured on the job.
But they had some generic stuff that anybody could just dip their paws in and take 4, 5, 6.
Well, it was over-the-counter medication. And they also had anti-inflammatory ointments that they used. There was a pharmacy in Washington, D.C. known as Grubbs Pharmacy. It was famous for making their hot sauce ointment. The team used to buy about 30 jars of it every season that they used for rubbing on the players.
Whoa. That's like pickle grime for blisters back in the Nolan Ryan days. Did you follow that?
No.
Bet you did. That was when he was a Met. That was part of a little concoction that they cooked up in the clubhouse. I don't remember which pitching coach, but it was literally dipped his finger in pickle grime or whatever it was.
And I can tell you, if it works, it spreads through baseball like wildfire. They all know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that the clubs are taking care of their players, or the unions are taking care of their players as far as their long-term health, given the readable accessibility, let's say, of drugs that could be hard to get off of down the road? And that's not just baseball. It's a societal thing going on right now.
Yeah, I can tell you that when I was there with the A's, they were very, very, very careful with drugs such as Vicodin or OxyContin. They used them sparingly. And they used other methods of pain control for that very, very reason. The other side of the coin is, as you know, when a player gets injured, or you may not know, that when a player gets injured on the A's, they're covered by workers' compensation.
No.
And they're covered by workers' compensation. And they have one of the trainers, he's down in their Phoenix facility down in Mesa, handles all the long-term problems that players have had with injuries over the years. And, they try and make settlements with the players over the years. And I found out that some players who in their days 20 years ago are still receiving treatment for their injuries covered by workers' compensation.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of nice that the system is taking care of them.
Yeah, it is.
You've seen a lot of players, and you're into all sports, basketball, football, a little bit. Do you see a high preponderance of these folks over the years who have made a shit pot full of money? More than we could have dreamt about making in their lives, that they could have dreamt about. Like, end up broken, penniless, and is it such a high proportion that you shake your head and you go, "Whoa, something's wrong"?
Well, not so much today because they're making a lot more money than they were in the 90s. When they went on strike in 94, the average salary was $1 million a year, which is a lot of money. Even today, it's a lot of money.
Thank you.
But now they're making. Well, if you take the average salary, I mean, the starting salary for a player, a rookie, is $510,000.
These guys, if you're playing today under these circumstances, you're going to be judged statistically, but in terms of what I'm talking about 20 years from now. I'm talking about from the days that you, in the 90s, when these guys made $1 million, if you followed what they're getting from workman's comp and this, that, and the other thing, do you see a high percentage, not just with the A's or around baseball, around the sports world, basketball especially, these guys going through money like Grant went through Richmond?
Not really, although maybe in basketball, because you get a lot of kids from the inner cities and they're unfamiliar with or not trained on handling money. They can blow through it. They make a lot of money and they think it's going to go on forever and they don't plan for the future. But that could happen with the young players coming in from baseball too. They get a boatload of money. And
well, if they're predominantly Southerners, I can't see much difference in terms of money management acumen, something I had none of and will continue to have none of. But so I'm not being judgmental, than an inner city kid. And I think from what I see and have heard, witnessed by the BATS program, Major League Assistance Program, and stories of folks, I think there's a mishandling of bucks, and it's the responsibility of the unions and or the management when they bring players into the organization to teach them some sort of, keep your stuff together, because you're going to have a lot of money run through you. And
well, one of the things that Isla and I have discussed many times, it's not only for kids going into sports, but for all kids. They don't have courses in high school on how to balance a checkbook and how to be responsible with money. They just don't
or how to be a parent.
Yeah, exactly. So there are some things that we can do as a society to prepare young people for a life, whether they go to college or graduate from high school. They're better off going to college because they're going to make more money in the long run. But as you know, not everybody's going to do that.
Well,
but
most people are better
prepared.
off going to trade school, to be honest with you, because you can make a lot more money in trade school sometimes than you can with the liberal arts.
Sure.
And some kids are just not suited for college, which doesn't mean they can't be tremendously productive and make good bucks, because union jobs, skilled construction jobs and what have you, or plumbing and this, that, and the other thing, will always be in demand. And sometimes being an art teacher, jobs few and far between, and not compensated very well. That's a societal thing, but go ahead.
Well, if you're a player, I think you get an agent. Some of the agents are pretty good business managers too, and a lot of players have business managers. And there's been some scandals where the business managers have stolen from the players. And you remember I think some of the investments that
Greenberg, I remember there was a guy.
Yeah.
Hank Greenberg's kid.
So there've been scandals in this regard. But if you get a good business manager and you plan for the future, my God, if you could make over the course, you take a person like a superstar like A-Rod, who had a $300 million contract, or John Carlos Stanton, they're going to be in Pujols. They have enough money for not only their lifetimes, their kids' lifetimes, but their grandkids. And if they invest their money wisely, either in real estate.
By today's day and age, the salaries compared, as you said, to the 90s. By today's day and age, they shouldn't have any problems.
Right, they shouldn't.
But they could be ripped off. They could make investments. And if you want to take it back to the days of Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle, those two, for an example, Yogi Berra, everything he touched turned to gold. And Mickey Mantle, investment-wise, what have you, everything he touched turned to crap. Nobody, so who's to say from that standpoint? Yogi was fortunate enough to have a wife that was the chairman of the board of the House, and made the decision. She was very, very intelligent, whereas Yogi was street smart and smart enough to listen to his wife to make the investment. That kind of thing.
But Mickey didn't have that. Mickey had other problems too. He was an alcoholic, and that cut his life short by about 10 years because he had cirrhosis of the liver,
right?
And which was sad. And right now, there's a guy who pitched for the Red Sox, the Giants, Jake Peavy, who was his business manager, did a number on him, and Peavy lost quite a bit of money.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That can happen. There are no guarantees. Then there are the other things. There are the women with babies. There are things like hanger-oners, buddies that you grow up with, that are just in it, family that lives with you, extended, and to be honest, recreational drugs. Cocaine, in the days that you were the pharmacist for the A's, were you able to recognize those that were abusing recreational drugs?
Well, the cocaine era was in the 70s, 70s and 80s. You remember they had the scandal with the Kansas City Royals. Our friend Vida Blue was caught up in that.
Right.
Dave Parker with the Pittsburgh I think it was the Pittsburgh Pirates. There was a scandal there. It was being abused a lot more than it is now. I think cocaine is still out there, but I think it's switched over to the opioids right now for recreational drug users. And addiction is a very serious problem in the country. I don't know how many deaths we have a year from opioid overdoses, but it's substantial.
Are people, excuse my ignorance, I'm an herbal kind of 420 guy, and exclusively that. Are people using opioids for recreational drugs to replace the kick or whatever they were getting from cocaine? The kick. I sound like my grandma. You get the kick from that crap?
Well, the cocaine users were also using, because it's very similar to methamphetamine. There's a lot of methamphetamine use. You get a high, then you got to come down off of it, and then you go back on it and off of it. So they use a lot of uppers and downers.
Okay.
And opioids are downers, and they depress respiration, and you need more and more of it to sustain the high that you get or the problem, whatever you're using it for.
Why can't kids be like we were and just have a simple 8-ball to get you by when you go through college?
I have no idea. I don't know what's missing.
Right. I don't know. Right. Why do things have to be complicated? How did you get into pharmacy?
My brother was a pharmacist.
Okay. And you just...
I had a Bachelor of Arts degree from Bates College. And I went into the military. And my job prospects, because I had a liberal arts degree, didn't look too terrific. So,
just what we talked about.
Yeah, so I was able to go to pharmacy school, and I didn't have to take a lot of stuff. I just had to take the pharmacy programs, and got licensed in 1964. So it took a couple of years out of my life to get the degree, but it gave me a profession which guaranteed me work at the time, and that's the most important thing.
Do you feel as a pharmacist, not yourself, but the pharmacy profession, more qualified to prescribe medication than a doctor would? That pharmacists should work with doctors and consult with them before just simply getting a prescription from them?
Yeah, the question is, I don't feel more competent to prescribe for conditions. That doctor is trained for that. They know that. Pharmacists know quite a bit about what the medications are for, what they do.
Much more so the side effects and what have you than the doctors who are buying them from the drug companies, this, that, and the other thing. Am I correct on that?
Well, the doctors don't buy drugs from. Well, some doctors dispense,
but don't. Yeah, okay. Don't they get a kick? Like if a doctor prescribes Bayer aspirin, right? And don't they get some sort of deal with the drug companies?
Nope, that's inappropriate.
Do they get free samples? And
yes, they get samples of medication that they can give to their patients as a trial dose, which is a good way of finding out whether or not the patient can take the medication. If you go into a doctor and he prescribes a medication, even with his knowledge and even with the pharmacist's knowledge, there is no way to indicate that will tell you what will happen to you when you take the drug. No one knows until you take it.
So you're a science kid.
Yeah, you're an experiment every time you get a new prescription for something. You just don't know how it's going to. You hope that it's going to work for you. They have the studies that show that, so many, but they also tell you in literature they don't tell you how many people, but they just tell you that this occurred, that occurred, and it's a potential that these things could occur. Part of the problems that you have when people want to know the side effects, if you can tell them you're going to get dizzy, you're going to get drowsy, you're going to have an upset stomach, you plant in their mind that it could happen, and they think it happens, and it may happen. We don't know, but when you get a prescription, now you get literature with your prescription, and it tells you the potential side effects, and you can read it and see for yourself. The other thing, and of course, things are so much complicated, and people are taking multiple medications. What happens if I'm taking heart medication and you give me a blood thinner, or you give me this? What's going to happen? So
now,
those
isn't
are real
that what
questions,
a pharmacist does with their computers? Yep. That's your job, is to make sure that you're not getting counterproductive medication.
Right. That's right.
All right.
A lot of responsibility in being a pharmacist.
Do you find that in retirement that your mind keeps clicking and that it's very difficult for you to turn it off?
No, I do sports now. I don't worry about it.
Okay, beautiful.
I like Tony La Russa, when I was with the A's, used to tell the players, turn the page. You can't do anything about yesterday. I've retired from pharmacy. They got a lot of new medications out there, and if I were called in to do any kind of work, I'd feel very uncomfortable. I haven't done it for eight or 9 years now. So there's a lot of new stuff out there, and that's fine.
Do you keep your license going?
Yep.
So, but you
Just
still
in
feel
case.
uncomfortable, even though you must take some courses to do that.
Yeah, you have to take continuing education. We've been doing that for 40 years, and I have mixed feelings about it. On one hand, it's good. On the other hand, sometimes you get the courses in diabetes, hypertension, and opioid addiction, and the courses keep repeating themselves. So sometimes you don't get a lot of new stuff, which I think would be more important. But that's just my opinion.
Okay. Are there big advantages to eating 2 bananas a day?
You get a lot of potassium.
Yep. Is that really good for you? Because I've been living on 2 bananas a day and more stuff, but basically eating a lot of bananas, and to this moment, and I'm knocking on Formica, I'm okay.
Well, as long as, I don't know if you're on any medications. If you're not on any medications, we can discuss that privately, not on the podcast.
My only medication is my herb, and I consider myself well medicated with something that has no toxic effects, as far as I know. We can discuss that right now. I'm just I'm wondering how you feel about that. It's 4:20 as we speak, and I'm talking to a pharmacist, and I have for 50 years been what is jokingly referred to as a wake-in baker, and I do what I do, and it limits me in certain things, and it greatly enhances me in other things. So that notwithstanding, I'm talking about for health. Do you have an overall, it's been legalized for health purposes for 10 years now, and now recreationally, but do you have any strong opinions one way or the other?
Well, when I was practicing, we couldn't handle, the pharmacists were not allowed to handle the drug because it was classified Schedule 1. And from a legal perspective, pharmacists still cannot deal with marijuana. They can't in California. They can't, even though it's legal, they can't sell it because they're licensed by the DEA. You have a DEA number. And
Jerry, all that stuff is Michigan. I'm talking all the way that they license it and classify it as Schedule A. That's craziness. I'm talking about what you feel as a human being who have been around people all your life, who have been around the effects of everything, and I'm sure you've known people such as myself who are what they are and avoid medication. Other than that, how do you feel about that?
Well, I've had
not the pharmacist.
No, I had people that came in that were using the marijuana for medical purposes. I had a young lady who had multiple sclerosis, and she was taking multiple medications, and she added marijuana, and she was smoking marijuana, and it helped ease her pain. And I found nothing wrong with that. If it works and it's successful, why not? And if it works for glaucoma, fine, why not? That's a terrible disease where you could lose your eyesight, and if that helps you, good. And if I'm opposed, if you get loaded on marijuana and you're driving, it's no different than drunk driving with alcohol.
Of course.
So there got to be some penalties for misuse of the drug, and if it becomes a danger to society, it shouldn't be used.
Of course, but there is a case to be made, and you're talking to someone who's taught traffic school, and I talked to hundreds of drivers, and have driven myself 40 years in California, 50 years. There's a case to be made that smoking weed makes you a more cautious driver, less aggressive, and what causes problems is the aggression, less caught up in the effects of traffic jams and what have you. But that aside, I'm just talking how you feel about just personally, how you feel about society smoking it. Should it replace opioids? Do you feel the long-term effects are much less severe than the negative effects than that of opioids? Just to get your...
Yeah. I think it's much less. And the concern that I have is that would be the same concerns that you have with smoking, that there's substances in the weed that could be carcinogenic. So those are real concerns. You could have mouth cancer, that type of thing.
Okay.
I don't think that there have been enough studies done to show the effects of that. But those are real concerns. And you're right. If it mellows you out and you're less aggressive driving, fine. There's a lot of road rage in California with the traffic. There's a ton of road rage. And if anyone's on any type of amphetamines, it's a central nervous system stimulant. And I've seen people go off their nuts on methamphetamine, especially when they're driving. They become tremendously aggressive.
Absolutely.
So if you're on amphetamine and you have a smoke of marijuana and it calms you down, that's a good thing.
Okay, well, smoke it before getting in the car. And don't stink up the car, and always say, yes, officer, no, officer. And I'm going to give you, Jerry, and I'm going to tell this to everybody out there, a little traffic school tip. You're dealing with cops. It's yes, officer, no, officer. You don't say no, ma'am, yes, ma'am. You don't say no, sir, yes, sir. Because in today's day and age, you don't know. And a mustache, that can fool you. And then you'll get a ticket. So that's just my little advice to everybody. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And let the courts settle it. Don't argue with the cop. The cop wants to give you a ticket.
That's for sure.
Yes, ma'am, you keep your hand on the wheel.
That was the most important thing, because they can see where your hands are.
Right.
If you start reaching for the glove
they're more
box,
afraid of you than you are of them. They want to go home to their kids. You want to go home to your kids. So if you communicate and ask them, or you tell them, I have a weapon in my car. I'm licensed for it. It's in the glove compartment. May I reach for it, sir? And, you look over your right shoulder. You got to make sure the cop is communicating with the other cop who may be covering the first cop. So it's all kinds of things that go along with being alive. There is a direct correlation of the number of people who are, quote, accidentally killed by cops, who are killed with mistakes, by the color of one's skin. It's an is. Just like everything else, it's better to know than not to know.
Sure.
It's better if you're in doubt about driving under any influence, and park the car and take a lift, take an Uber or whatever. Always know that one little bit of alcohol can cause effects mixed with any sort of medication that can be a killer. So that's my...
you brought that up. And for years, there are certain drugs, a lot of antihistamines used to be on prescriptions. Now they're sold over the counter. And drugs like chlorpheniramine, which is, or diphenhydramine, that's known as Benadryl, or chlortrimeton, those drugs are used in cold preparations. And, they get the warning on the box, but it's in such small print.
It's not just a small print, it's in English. People is not going to read.
Yeah. And they don't read it. They have a cold, they take a couple cold pills, they go to a bar after work, they be with their friends. They have a couple drinks and they pass out while driving, or their reaction time is so slow they'll plow into a car in front of them, or whatever. And
don't be fooled into thinking that marijuana mixed with those drugs are any less toxic and bad for you on the road. Don't take any drugs and mix them with marijuana.
Exactly.
As much as I joke about it, but. try to do the best you can. That's it. You know, Jerry, this has been terrific because we didn't just talk A's baseball. We helped people who may need clarifications on certain things that a man of your wisdom can deliver. And I'm proud to have you on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And
yeah, it's fun.
It's fun for me, Jerry. Thank you so much.
Can I make one more comment before we go?
Certainly.
And you posted today about Fritz Peterson having Alzheimer's disease,
yes.
And it's a real shame. And I was listening. You posted a program that you did with Fritz. I don't know how many years ago. I was about halfway through it, and listening to him talk about the Yankees back in the Yankees and how you were a Mets fan. You weren't a Yankee hater, but I was. When I was a kid, I was a Red Sox fan growing up in Boston. Hated the Yankees. When I was with the A's, and I had an epiphany, and this is in 96, 97, 98, when the Yankees started their run where they won all those world championships under Joe Torre. And I realized that the Yankees must have been doing something right all those years to get all the great players, to recognize talent, to sign the talent, and to produce a winning team that won 27 pennants, 27 world championships and 40 pennants. They were dominant in baseball. Nobody liked them. The best team in the National League was the Cardinals with 11 world championships, and the A's, I think, a third with 9. So the Yankees as a franchise now, you know, I like you. I wasn't a Giant fan in the 50s, but I was a fan of any National League team that was playing the Yankees in the World Series. So for me, it was the Brooklyn Dodgers most of the time. Loved the Dodgers. Talked about the Dodgers. My roommate in college was a Dodger fan, and we would pull for the Dodgers. Rooted for the Giants in 51. 54, I'm not sure. I don't think I rooted for Cleveland, so I wasn't unhappy that the Giants won the World Series in 54.
Well, my first year as a fan was in 51 as a Giant fan at the Polo Grounds. So we'll talk about that next show, Jerry. Thank you, my friend. And
you got it.
It's just time that we got to restrain to you. But we'll talk next week. And adios. Thanks for listening, everybody. Great segment, my friend.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.